Okay. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. I'm Anthony Mills from Global Innovation Institute. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar on the Future Fit Manifesto. What I'm going to do is, first of all, introduce to you the Future Fit Manifesto very briefly, and then I'm going to introduce our guest hosts, our guest speakers today that are with me. And after I introduce them, then I and our guests are going to engage in a series of questions and answers where I'm going to ask them questions and they're going to offer answers. And in that way, we'll have a very conversational discussion about Future Fit Manifesto. And at the end, the last 15 minutes or so, we'll reserve for questions you have from the audience. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat window here. Or bring them up to us at the end, and we'll save some time for questions from the audience. So that's our format for today. So moving ahead then, the Future Fit Manifesto, you may or may not have heard about, is a new manifesto that was launched earlier this year on the 20th anniversary of the Agile Manifesto. And it builds on the Agile Manifesto by really talking about and addressing what organizations need to do to have a future fit mindset, to prepare themselves for the future. So going beyond Agile, how do we think about what the possible futures can be and the preferable futures we want, and how do we work toward achieving those futures inside of our organization? So that's it in a nutshell. And I want to just briefly share a screen with you here. And are we seeing the website for Future Fit?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is the website for Future Fit Manifesto. So I'd invite you all to visit this. The website URL is futurefitmanifesto.org. And what you'll see there is that the manifesto for Future Fit organizations presents four very specific principles at the beginning, values, four specific values at the beginning. Dealing with collaborative culture, innovative systems, discovering opportunities, and creating alternate futures. And then based on those four values, it presents 12 principles of future fit organizations. We're not going to read those now, but some of those will come out in our conversation today. So I would encourage you during or after this webinar to check out this website and have a look at the website and learn more about the Future Fit Manifesto. So with that, I want to introduce my guests today. I have two guests with me, Ludwig Melik and Gijs van Wulfen. And I'll introduce them, and then we'll go into the discussion. So Ludwig is the CEO of Planbox, Agile Innovation Management Platform, as well as Idea Connection, an open innovation expert solver network. Ludwig has more than 20 years of experience and is an esteemed thought leader and domain expert in full lifecycle innovation portfolio management, emerging tech empowerment, and ecosystem enablement. Throughout his tenure, he's helped organizations across industries build a sustainable business strategy embedded in a culture of innovation. He's deeply engaged in and actively contributes to global innovation communities like the Conference Board, Project Management Institute, International Institute for Learning, and Innovation Leader. He's also a member of the ISO 56000 Committee for Innovation Management and works closely with leading analysts to help tomorrow's innovation systems and standards. So welcome to Ludwig. Our second guest is Gijs van Wulfen. And Gijs is a worldwide authority in innovation and design thinking. He's the founder of the Fourth Innovation Method, a scientifically proven methodology for the start of innovation, which is implemented now on 6 continents around the world. His third book on innovation, The Innovation Maze, was crowned recently as Management Book of the Year. As a LinkedIn influencer, Gijs has over 330,000 followers. Wow. Gijs is from Crete and the island where he lives now, and he inspires people from there with his keynotes, his books, his webinars, and his YouTubes that are viewed all over the world about practical ways to be great innovators. So you can check out his latest book as well, called Inspiration for Innovation, 101 Lessons for Innovation, and his YouTube channel, which is Inspiration for Innovation. So welcome, Gijs.
Thank you so much. I see also we have Rick in the room now, Anthony.
Okay, Rick Freedman is also with us. Thank you. I'm glad you could make it, Rick. Let me introduce Rick. So Rick's the author of The Agile Consultant, and he has experienced the Agile transition from the inside. Rick's been working as an Agile coach and trainer since the beginning of the Agile movement. He's got 30 years of experience as a strategic consultant, both as an employee of large organizations like Citicorp and Dun & Bradstreet, and as a principal consultant for Capgemini, NEC, and Intel. As a worldwide project management leader for Intel from 2001 to 2005, Rick evangelized, trained, and coached Intel managers in the US, UK, China, India, Germany, and Australia. Since leaving Intel, Rick has consulted with clients like Microsoft, HP, Motorola, NASA, BP, Marriott, Verizon, H&R, Block, Blue Cross Blue Shield, the US Department of Treasury, and many, many more. Rick's also contracted with StratX, the worldwide training company, as the key Agile consultant. And he's authored StratX's Agile Project Management course. Rick's also the author of The IT Consultant, Building the IT Consultancy Practice, and The E-Consultant. Rick lives in Lenexa, Kansas. Thank you for joining us, Rick.
Of course.
Okay, so we have with us Ludwig, Gijs, and Rick, and I'm going to start with some questions for these gentlemen and have them answer it. So Ludwig, I'm going to start with you. And the first question I have is for you. It's because you're really one of the catalysts behind the manifesto. Is tell us in your own words, what is the Future Fit Manifesto and how it came to be? You're muted, Ludwig. You're muted. There we go.
That's fine. Yeah, thank you, everyone, and thank you for the introductions. Very happy to have the opportunity to be part of this presentation. And like you said, we thought it would be interesting to think about how the world has changed and what kind of captures the spirit of the world we live in today. Of course, the Agile Manifesto had a significant impact in how projects were planned and executed and how work got done. In the last 20 years, we think the world has, of course, changed significantly since then. So being agile is no longer enough. And it kind of made sense to try to kind of gravitate towards what, logically is happening around us. Corporate life expectancy is at an all-time low. There are a lot of opportunities that abound. There's a lot of analysts that believe that in the next 10 years, there'll be more innovation than in the last 100 years. And the reality is that the rapid rate of technology change and transformation is forcing companies to really reinvent their business model and operations in a sustainable manner. Innovation itself has also changed a lot. It has, certainly gone beyond just thinking about introducing new products, and also related to that, of course, you can no longer really just rely on a limited number of individuals to make it happen. So I think, overall, it kind of made sense to think about capturing all of these kind of elements and having the opportunity to think about how organizations can really drive productivity, engagement, and collaboration with everyone involved, which is kind of the spirit of the world we live in today. And that's kind of what made us think about taking that next, hopefully what should be a leap forward with Future Fit.
Very good. So, and this began in like 2019, the work on it originally?
Exactly. I think it took us definitely several weeks and then, a few months to capture everything. We obviously got lots of interest with a lot of different organizations and what I would say change makers around the world who were interested in getting involved with the topic. At the same time, we were also kind of mindful of what ultimately was potentially viewed as some of the things that should have been maybe better accounted for as part of the original discussion around what the Agile movement was about. So we wanted to make sure that with this new, iteration of where the world is going next with Future Fit, we had a more diverse, more global discussion that included, folks from around the world, from different backgrounds. So I think we were really able to capture that with the people that ultimately got involved with what we kind of refer to now as our Future Fit Alliance.
Very good. Yes, and more organizations are joining the alliance. But yes, it did start with the original think tank of really thought leaders contributing to this. So understanding then that the Future Fit Manifesto is a new manifesto about how organizations work and thinking about more evolved and emergent ways of collaborating and creating new futures. What, and this question goes out to Gijs and Rick and to Ludwig, to all of us. What do we feel is the primary competitive advantage of a future fit mindset? What competitive advantage can that bring about? Gijs, Rick, you have any thoughts on this? Rick, I think you're muted. Gijs, you're muted as well.
So I think in the business environment that we're in now, where everything is changing so quickly, and where there are disruptive competitors coming from every angle, it's very important for organizations to be thinking about not just how they can innovate, but how they can systematize their innovation and make sure that they are looking out into the future, looking out at competitors, looking out at the shape of the marketplace, and ensuring that they are not solving only yesterday's problems, but they are looking forward to tomorrow's problems, tomorrow's scenarios, tomorrow's situations. Those organizations, in my observation as a traveling consultant, those organizations that have a system in mind, whether it's the way they are organized or the way they are carving out small groups to do innovative work, there are a lot of different approaches. But the important element is that they are systematically looking at the future, systematically thinking about how to innovate towards the problems and challenges of that future, and systematically acting on the ideas that arise. So
very good. Thank you, Rick. And so, Gijs, I want to sort of also ask you. I mean, in your mind, Gijs, what are the specific organizational challenges and market realities that are giving rise to this need for a Future Fit Manifesto? Why do you think now is the time is right for this manifesto?
Well, you know, I guess that most people in the C-suite and board of directors are a bit of my age, in their 60s. And we grew up learning, you know, the SWOT analysis. Everybody remember here the SWOT analysis? Wow, that was interesting. You just have to combine your strengths with your opportunities and ready, right? And that's what we did. And the next year we updated the year. We didn't even have Word Microsoft because the computer was not on our desk yet. But that's what we did, right? And we updated it and updated it. And it was, you know, it was like the future would go as in the strategic plan. And once every 3 years, we made a strategic plan. And but the speed of change is enormously, right? So the last 50 years, the product life cycle, but Ludwig knows more about it than I do, has been diminished with a factor of 4. A factor of 4. And if we look at the speed, you know, the speed is enormous. The speed of change is enormous. So what's the use of making plans, right? That's really a good question. And because those plans are made in stone most of the time. So the plan is finished, let's go to the work again. Let's go to work again, right? It's kind of a ritual. And so what I think is that also, you know, responding to change, then you're even too late. You have to ride different waves at the same time and just be on different waves, all of them, and see which ones will be the prevalent one. And so I think that's what you should learn, because you know one thing, you know, world has been reshaped already by digitalization, and disruption will continue. Even you know, people talk about exponential change. So the future fit mindset, you know, will empower empower more people in your organization to be future oriented. You know, a lot of organizations have it now monopolized, right? Oh, we have now an innovation department, but I don't think that really works, right? So I think, especially in the big corporations, a lot more people should be future forward looking, not only on the operational excellence today, but it's not or innovation excellence or operational excellence. To be future fit, you have to do more than both. That's my contribution here, Anthony.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on. And I think to elaborate on that a little bit, I mean, to what you're saying is, you know, back in the day, there was traditional strategic planning where it was all based on making forecasts of the future based on assumptions about the past and looking at past trends and saying, okay, we think the future is going to be this based on those trends. And everything was based on intensive planning. And we expected to be able to plan the future and follow this plan, and everything will work according to plan. But what has changed radically and dramatically over the last 20 years, I think, is that our ability to really plan for the future has diminished significantly. And because we are experiencing numerous arenas of exponential change. And so the ability to have a fixed, rigid strategic plan based on planning kind of gives way now to the need for having a general strategy and a direction and vision and goals, but at the same time, undertaking relentless experimentation around that path to find, you know, what's going to work and not work going forward according to that strategy. So all of this requires really engaging the entire organization in the search and the hunt for new opportunities that will allow us to live out our purpose and our strategy, and then try with, you know, tremendous amount of experimentation, a lot of these different opportunities, and see how we can shape and drive the future to be what we want it to be through those endeavors. So that's very good. That's excellent.
Yeah. I was just going to add that, you know, I think, you know, ultimately, because organizations see that innovations don't have the staying power as they used to have, you know, you kind of thought about having a second act. Well, you know, the reality is you need to really have a lot of second acts. You need to continuously think about, how do you identify new revenue streams? How do you potentially find major cost reduction opportunities? Again, these are, of course, the top line things that any organization is ultimately looking for. And that future fit mindset is to help you really drive those game-changing opportunities that can deliver the results organizations are looking for. Because again, those old innovations that would kind of serve you well for many years to come is no longer the case. You know, the disruption happens very quickly. It has global and tremendous effect in the marketplace. But then, you know, a few months later, potentially a few weeks later, you need to think about, well, now what do we do next? That innovation has kind of seen its life cycle through. Now we need to come up with a new opportunity that will allow us to once again have a profound either revenue opportunity in the marketplace, or look for other cost reductions that will help us deliver on the results that the organization is looking for.
Very good. Thank you, Ludwig. Rick, I want to come back to you too, because the Future Fit Manifesto was launched on the 20th anniversary of the Agile Manifesto. So you're our Agile expert here. Tell us in your thoughts how the Future Fit Manifesto builds on the Agile Manifesto. Does it obsolete the Agile Manifesto in any way? What's the continuation there?
So when Ludwig and the team asked me to get engaged in this conversation, and they forwarded to me the original drafts of the manifesto and some of the other documents, I was very adamant that this be perceived as additive to the Agile Manifesto and not as competitive to it or in contrast to it. I think that the ideas that propelled the Agile revolution were based on the faults that we found in the traditional project management model. The idea that we could plan and estimate a large project at the beginning before we knew enough about the project to really know what we were dealing with. A lot of fallacies that were exposed during the traditional project management environment were the drivers for the changes that we implemented in Agile. And now, as you say, it's 20 years later, and we're starting to see some of the deficiencies or fallacies that were related to Agile. The idea that innovation is automatically going to pop out of the process just because we are applying Agile methods rather than traditional methods, for example. And so I think we took a very thoughtful look at the things in Agile that are still pertinent, obviously, and many of them still are. The idea of self-directed teams, the idea of non-authoritarian organizations, as well as some of the Scrum practices. And we thoughtfully considered how we could expand some of those ideas. And to me, the main things that draw me to this Future Fit conversation are the opportunity for more innovation and the opportunity for more collaboration within a community. If you've looked at the manifesto, you see that we use the word community a lot. And I don't think that, there is an Agile community, but I don't think the practice of Agile itself automatically forms communities. And so the idea that we are looking towards a community that drives innovation together, I think, is a very important extension. The idea that we are driven to innovate towards the future is a key extension to the Agile idea. So I think there are a lot of things here that take some of the things that we discovered from the Agile idea and bring them into the future, where these collaborative elements and these innovation elements are going to be more and more important. It is not in contrast or in competition with Agile, in my view. I think that's one of the things I was very keen on. And I want it to be thought of as not only the Agile manifesto, but also these new ideas that we are introducing rather than instead of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think that's the way I see it as well. They're very complementary to one another. And I think the Agile manifesto still delivers tremendous value for organizations and pursuing Agile methods and being able to execute very nimbly on, particularly in the software world, on the things they're doing today, and doing that rapidly and nimbly and with high efficiency. But I think the Future Fit Manifesto really does build on top of that and takes it yet quite a long ways further by now taking us to really look out further into the future and think very future oriented about how do we take this great organization we built around Agile and now extend that organization and make it one that's truly fit for the future. And as I like to say, will remain relevant to the market and will remain resilient and robust to all the changes that are happening. So absolutely, I totally agree with that. Ludwig, I wanted to turn to you a little bit and ask you, in your opinion, who inside the organization should ultimately own the Future Fit strategy therein?
Sure. So I think, that's kind of one of the things that, Agile, probably over time became such a, interesting and important initiative that probably kind of outgrew what it was meant to be. So it really started as a team-based approach for software development, and then it became something that the entire organization wanted to kind of take on. But ultimately, it was not really kind of designed with that mindset in mind. So I think the Future Fit approach from the get-go is meant to be an enterprise approach and a strategy that an organization needs to think about undertaking. So clearly, the ultimate owner for this would have to be the CEO, who would really drive that mandate. In terms of the systems, clearly that would be owned by the CIO. There would have to be a very important contribution by the human resources officer in the organization to make sure that, this efforts are really aligning with how everyone who's going to contribute to it is going to be recognized for their efforts. But ultimately, really, every executive in the organization needs to have a future fit enablement as part of their objectives. And that's really what we're kind of looking for and what we think about as we, think about having an organization that really adopts a future fit mindset.
Very good. So yeah, and to kind of build on that, I mean, if an organization already has like a very strong innovation program, and they have like a chief innovation officer, what is their role in the whole thing there too? I mean, how do they fit into Future Fit?
Sure. So I think from my perspective, what you want to have, of course, much like the discussion around Future Fit, innovation has to be the collaboration of work of everyone in the organization. So ultimately, in our experience, the chief innovation officers that are the most successful are the ones who really build a center of excellence and allow the organization to have an ability to create best practices that everyone in the organization can take advantage of, but it doesn't necessarily rely or become taxing on only a set number of individuals to have to deliver across the entire organization, because that would just not be scalable in nature. So ultimately, what you want to do is have this center of excellence, this shared practice that everyone can tap into and take advantage of for their particular purposes, for whatever are their innovation objectives and mandates for that particular initiative or for that particular year. And that's ultimately what we think as, the way the chief innovation officer would get involved in building out and making sure that that center of excellence is available, accessible, and can be leveraged across the organization.
Okay, very good. Gijs, I want to turn to you and ask you, in your opinion, how do you think Future Fit affects the future of work inside of organizations?
Big time. That's the short answer, Anthony. Big time.
You want to elaborate on that?
Sure, I will. It are all speculations, but once I read a quote, I'm sorry I don't remember it, but somebody said, if the pace of change within your organization is slower than the pace of change outside your organization, you will have a problem. Well, Houston, a lot of organizations will have a problem, right? And I think it will affect it in lots of ways. Of course, in the manifesto, we said ourselves, we try to, I think organization needs to be unsiloed again, right? It's kind of creating departments, but you're putting walls to them. Also, I think that to be faster and quicker, and that we call it unbossing, and I love that word in our manifesto. We have to unboss the organization, right? And we have to get the responsibilities lower in the organization so people can drive their own work. I think that's also very important. Of course, collaboration. We need to really collaborate. And it's not only open innovation, though, as we said, we need to really collaborate with the community. So I see that the hard borders of the organization become vague, right? Mm-hmm. There will be people, continuously flowing in and outside. We will have all kinds of partnerships. So the organization itself will be more a kind of fluid. What I would also assume now is that it will be much more learning driven. Of course, you need results, but it will be much more learning driven. And what I hope that it gets less, although I am a business economist, right? It gets less money driven, but more purpose driven too. That's are my first thoughts here. So that's why my answer was big time, Anthony.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I mean, your point in the beginning that if change is happening more faster on the outside than the inside, then you're probably not going to be in business in 5 or 10 years. So certainly, I think it's an awakening and a realization inside of organizations that, hey, we really do have to make sure that our pace of adaptation, transformation, and change as an organization not only in the value that we're delivering to the market, but in who we are and how we operate. Those things have to change, and they have to change at a pace that's on par with or even ahead of, you know, the external environment. So you're absolutely right. So I think that does require the organizations to, number one, embrace change, you know, and say change is not an enemy, it's our friend, it's just the reality. And we have to work in the context of change, and we can't fight that. So I think that does force organizations to become much more agile, if you will, and adaptive in how they try to transform the organization over time. So I think that is going to affect the future. And I think more and more things are shifting toward ecosystem innovation, where it's not just one organization, but it's many organizations. And as you talked about, that's really where a lot of the collaboration in our network and our community comes into play, because we're going to be increasingly dependent on really leveraging ecosystems to realize, you know, the future strategies and the way things are changing. So I think, you know, that in itself is inherently changing the future of work and the nature of work, because I think, as you're saying, that the borders of the organization are becoming much more, you know, amorphous and pliable, and it's what I call, you know, open door, basically. We're bringing in lots of partners and lots of community and lots of network and lots of ecosystem to really make new forms of value happen in the future. And I think that's just a requirement. So I think you're right on, absolutely. Rick, I want to ask you this question, since given your extensive background in the world of project management, in what ways do you think the Future Fit mindset stands to impact an organization's project management office?
So interesting question, because I am right now engaged with a large financial services company, and that has a very strong PMO, and lots of our funding and lots of our approvals for moving projects forward drive through that PMO. But now we are examining just about every element of the way the PMO works, because we have, for instance, been doing project-based funding rather than team-based funding, as you might see in a real agile organization. So the organization is going through the process of trying to figure out how to move to funding teams and then funneling work through those teams rather than putting a big dollar amount next to a project. So a lot of the very basic assumptions in how PMOs work, how projects are funded, are now being dismantled by some of these new ideas. I see traditional project managers who will sometimes struggle with some of these new concepts. Project managers are accustomed to sort of behaving as a foreman and being the central element of driving projects forward. And now, of course, it's the team that is the core self-directing mechanism to make sure that projects get done. So the entire system of oversight that we have used in previous years, where authority trickled down from the PMO to the program manager, to the project manager, to the team doing the work, has now been upended by the idea that innovation and interesting deliverables are going to come out of the team self-directing, self-managing, figuring this stuff out. So it changes the entire dynamic of sort of power interaction and management interaction from this top-down PMO-driven, authority-led model to this new, more, I would say, participatory, democratic, collaborative model that started with Agile, and I think is being expanded through these ideas that we are elaborating here in the Future Fit Manifesto. And I think that the project management office, which was previously mostly focused on predictability and control, now migrates or evolves to a situation where the PMO office is also interested in encouraging innovation, encouraging cross-silo collaboration, and ensuring that we are not just fulfilling the existing backlog of products, but that we are thinking about the products that nobody has thought about yet.
Wow. So it almost sounds like the death of the traditional PMO.
I think that, I've been doing this agile transition work for a long time, and I have not seen what I would consider to be a pure agile implementation anywhere. Every organization creates some sort of hybrid. And especially in highly regulated industries like I am working in right now, the structure is still important, the discipline is still important, and the compliance with regulatory requirements is still important. And so organizations have to figure out how to hybridize the sort of self-management, self-discipline ethos of Agile with a more regulatory-driven environment. So there are lots of challenges there. I don't think the PMO is necessarily going away, but I do think it has to figure out how to adapt to a scenario where they are not a top-down authority, but they are more of a collaborative, facilitating organization.
Interesting. I wonder if that's going to impact the body of knowledge around project management certifications, like those from PMI and Prince too. I assume
the pending revision of the PMI cert that is either just released or just about to be released is very much focused on Agile, and has modified the approach recommended significantly to get away from this predictive traditional planning model and migrate towards an iterative incremental planning model. And I think that's an inevitable change as these Agile ideas become more embedded.
Fascinating, totally fascinating. Well, thank you for that, Rick. That was very eye-opening to me. It's like, but I'm glad to see that, because I think that is a direction that organizations need to be moving in to really be successful with this going forward in the future. So I'm glad to see the recognition in the industry across that. So now I want to ask a question for all of us, Ludwig and Gijs and Rick, but the question of what is required for the successful implementation of the Future Fit framework?
So I can get us started if you like. I think,
Sure.
We've obviously been hitting on some of these themes already. And the key, I think, from a lot of the studies we've also looked at is that organizations understand there's just so much goodness you can get from driving efficiencies. And, obviously companies have done a lot of work in that area with Six Sigma and other initiatives. And now ultimately where organizations think they can drive the highest competitive advantage from is to build those ecosystems for innovation. And, that's of course easier said than done. There's a lot of kind of thinking and work that has to go into, how do you build a community? What is the level of influence that you can really create in that community? And that community can be, of course, very broad. It could include certainly the collective intelligence of your employees, but it should also include your partners, the startup community, the academia. So kind of thinking about how you nurture and you create the right connections within that network, and understand, what is the level of diversity that it includes, what is the level of inclusivity that you're having, the conversations you're having with that community. And with everything, of course, we see in the world around us, it's not just about the customer. The stakeholder is really changing as a definition in the marketplace. What is the greater good you're going to really impact as an organization certainly has very big, important significance in terms of your staying power as an organization and the brand recognition you can drive in the organization. So that also means that you really need to think about how does that community discussion help you also understand the environmental, the social, and the governance impact that you're going to have as an organization as you think about how are you becoming future fit? What are the new innovations you're going to introduce in the marketplace? So there's, of course, a lot of these important angles that kind of come into play. So I'll kind of leave it there and I'll let everyone else jump in to add to that answer.
So 20 years ago, we were very clear on what a bank was, right? It was a repository for money, and it had capabilities that allowed us to deposit money and take money out and borrow money, et cetera. Now, it's very hard to define what a bank is with all of the fintech stuff that is happening, with all of the online capabilities and outreach. Is a bank now a technology company? Is it a partner? Is it something else? Many people who join banks specifically join them because of the stability, because they know that a bank is going to be what it has been all of these years. Now, suddenly they find themselves thrust into a situation where everything is changing, and where these stable definitions of what a bank was or what another type of organization may be are completely upended. And the company that we thought we were today may turn out to need to be a completely different company 3, 5, 8, 10 years from now. And so the ability, the flexibility, the mental agility, the ability to get out of our safe spot and be prepared for the fact that these stable concepts of what a business model is are going to be twisted and turned and strained and stretched. The ability to move through that without being distracted or being thrown off base, I think, is a key success factor for this work. Every organization out there now needs to figure out what their new business model is going to be, and they often need to figure it out every 6 months. And that requires a level of flexibility and mental agility that many organizations struggle with. My belief is that the adoption of these kind of ideas are all about mindset, and the ability of organizations to apply an agile, future fit mindset to the kind of challenges that we're going to be experiencing as we evolve.
I agree. I mean, absolutely, because and you make a good point about the banks. I mean, one of the things we do in some of our innovation methodologies is called assumption mapping, and where we sit down and we really map out what are the assumptions underlying our business model and our organization and what business we're in. And then we start throwing darts at that and testing them. Are they still valid assumptions or not valid assumptions? And a lot of times they're not. So this is what organizations really have to do is, what is a bank anymore? It's, changes are happening, changes are afoot that are completely changing the definition of our industry and the markets we're in and what we're doing. And so I think organizations have to be prepared to take that journey and really ask themselves, what is fundamentally changing about our industry and our markets, and what does therefore need to fundamentally change about us as an organization, our purpose and how we go about this. So I think that's absolutely critical for the successful implementation of this. Gijs, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, so it's about the community, as Ludwig said. It's I love the example that Rick gave about the bank, and it's your ability to change, to make a culture shift within your organizations, to work on the soft side. I think that in our organizations, the soft side will be responsible for 90%. Your ability to manage that and to transform that will be responsible for 90% of the results. How to get your organization in the learning mode again instead of in the control mode. How to get into an experimenting mode. How to give freedom to people. Those are the things which really will empower a successful implementation.
Yeah. So I think you're right. I mean, the organization ultimately and fundamentally needs to become much more of an experimental and learning organization, around a strategic direction, and learn to test assumptions and change and pivot and evolve and grow and transform as the future continues to unfold and we're trying to shape it. You're absolutely right. It has to become a very experimental and learning type of environment to make that happen successfully. So, and I think that all fits into what Rick was saying about, with the project management world. I think everything is becoming much more democratized at the lower level, and we really are looking to the entire organization to help us become experimental and learning in that sense. So any last thoughts about implementation, guys, before we turn to some of the questions our audience has? Okay, so let's we'll look at some of the questions that people are posing, and they're very good questions. And we have a few here from Muhammad Taibe. You know, he says that Heisman on that first of all, and then you guys can jump in. And because I do consulting and training and dealing with strategic. So to answer that question, I think the answer is really yes. I think organizations, to really be good at this, they need to formalize some sort of strategic foresight and strategic futuring operation inside the organization, so that they're out there studying trends and events and talking about the possible futures and the plausible futures and the probable futures, and what these different future scenarios can and might look like, and then thinking about strategies for how they can transform themselves, but also how they can capture and deliver new value in the market as it's going forward in the future. So I think it does require a strategic tool set where we're very explicitly looking at and talking about and thinking about the future and working on that. And there's actually a huge number of strategy tools that are focused on strategic futuring. If you want to learn more about those, get in touch with me afterwards, but I can turn you on to a lot of that. In fact, GNI sells a toolkit for strategic foresight and strategic futuring. And a lot of those tools are very useful for that sort of activity. So you guys have any other comments about new tools to really help with this?
So I'll jump in. I think, first of all, you could definitely look at some of the very interesting research that Forrester has done on the topic. They actually also use Future Fit as where organizations kind of really need to think about going next. And really the three elements that they recommend for you to think about capturing, and one of their analysts was actually part of the group that got involved with the Future Fit Manifesto, is looking at any kind of new initiatives you have with the three following lenses. How does it impact creativity? You know, how does it help your organization in terms of adaptability? And does it drive resilience? So, you know, if you kind of think about it in those terms, it really changes how your organization thinks about launching new initiatives. Certainly with the world we live in today and what we experienced with the pandemic, you can think about how important it is to have these additional factors, very important ones, you know, as part of the analysis you have in the mix. So I think in terms of, you know, changes that you want to think about including, that would be an important kind of additional lens that you should bring to the conversation.
Very good. Rick, anything on that? Are we good?
I think I'm good. I think it's been said. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question it was also from Mohammed. It was one of the issues most companies will be facing soon, if they're not already, is there's really the introduction of Gen Z to the workforce and the organizations. So he's asking, what effect does this have on, in our opinion, on innovation in companies in general? So you guys want to comment on Gen Z? Words.
Go
ahead.
I'm going to pass on that one.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to say, you know, we started our new company, Planbox, and it's been obviously a breath of fresh air to work with, you know, a whole new generation of innovators and, you know, very dynamic new talent. They think very differently. So I think, you know, definitely a lot of the things we're speaking about on this call, you know, creating a community, innovating inside out, making sure everyone has a voice, you know, creating what we call in one of our principles, this generation of trailblazers or, you know, folks that are essentially going to challenge the status quo. I think these are all things that really resonate with this new generation that wants to, you know, very much change the world we live in. So what better way to do that than to become Future Fit?
Yeah, and I think one of the key defining factors of that, and I really think from my research, it started with Gen X and has followed through with Gen Y, Gen Z, is that it's much more purpose oriented. So people of this generation, They want to be a part of something that is has a purpose in the world. And if you can anchor them in a sense of purpose, then really that goes a long ways. That you've got a long head start, because now our strategy, our goals, our visions, our future, everything we're doing, all this experimentation is all tied to that purpose. And I think that really attracts the Gen Z generation to work in an organization that has a true sense of purpose they're working toward. Okay.
I also think that generation has grown up in a much more volatile, external and internal environment. Those of us who grew up in the previous century, a washing machine was a washing machine. The product cycle didn't change that much. And the things that were trending didn't change as fast as they do now, and so they are accustomed to change and probably way more comfortable with it than those of us who were born in the last century probably are, which I think is an attitude that they bring to the work as well.
It's an excellent point, and that's true. I mean, the world, my kids have grown up as an extremely more a volatile world and fast-changing world than the world I grew up as a young person. So absolutely, you're right there. So Chander has added some comments here that I think are very apropos. He mentions the exponential organization, which was based on the book, The Exponential Organization, and now is an organization, EXO. They have a similar framework in terms of the mindset and the approach and the methodology called the EXO Sprint. And they've deployed these things at a lot of startups and scale-ups and then come to organizations. And that's based on 3 organizational elements: the massive transformative purpose, the scalability attributes, and the adaptability attributes. So I think, I'm very familiar with what EXO and EXO Open are doing, and they're extremely complementary to Future Fit Manifesto. I think both are trying to get at the same thing, and the type of exponential ability to change in the future as we go forward. The one thing I will comment on, and I think this is again true of both, is just to be 100% clear, it's not just about adapting to the future, but it's really about shaping the future. So there is a difference there, and adapting says we're going to see where the future is going, and then we're going to rapidly adapt to that. Whereas shaping says, no, we're actually going to be out on the forefront of that, proactively and preemptively acting to guide and direct and shape the future. And that's different than reacting and adapting to the future. That's being much more proactive about shaping the future. And I think ultimately both want to get to that. But I think that's a key element of Future Fit Manifesto is not to just adapt and react, but to actually proactively shape and influence the future and make it what we want it to be. Ludwig, Rick, Gijs, you guys agree with that? Want to comment on it?
What's that old expression? The best way to predict the future is to create it, right?
Yeah. Peter Drucker or Abraham Lincoln, depending on which one you want to.
Whoever, apocryphal perhaps, but I think very pertinent to this part of the conversation. Those organizations that are looking forward and figuring out how they can influence the direction of events rather than just responding to them, I think are going to have a significant advantage.
I think that was kind of also the mindset that helped us think about why Future Fit made sense, right? So if you think about, Agile, sometimes when it's taken kind of to the extreme with maybe too much of a narrow view, it becomes this constant, how do I make things slightly better, which just becomes incremental work. And it's great, you're kind of pushing the ball forward, but are you really changing things up enough, right? And that's kind of, the world we live in today, being a fast follower it doesn't sometimes give you enough time to catch up. You need to leap forward. You need to change things up. You need to become digitally native. So these things are, the reality of the world we live in today, which are in our mind captured a lot more clearly in the Future Fit mindset.
Very good. Excellent. So we're kind of winding down the last few minutes. I guess to wrap it up, I'd like to ask Ludwig and Rick and Gijs, of the 12 principles in the manifesto, did you have one in particular that was a favorite to you? Any of you guys?
Yes, I'd like to jump in here. Yes, I got one favorite because, an organization culture has to be strong, yes, but it's often strong, focused on this is the way how we do things here. It's often focused on operational excellence. So my favorite is number 10. It's the art of relentlessly challenging the status quo. And that's what you should do. Not okay, once, okay, we got our innovation, all right. Now we go again to the exploit phase instead of the explore phase. No, come on, tack, tack, tack. You continuously have to challenge it. So challenging must become the new normal, right? And and people like to conform, but you know, it's great to agree to permanently disagree about everything, right? It creates a lot of turmoil, but it keeps the minds open. So that's my favorite one.
And I think you're right. I think constantly challenging the status quo is what leads us to relentless experimentation around status quos, around the new things. So Ludwig or Rick, anything there? Otherwise, I'll tell you what mine is.
Please.
Well, mine is number 3, which says shape the future through a range of initiatives, from quick wins to long shots, with a preference for game-changing opportunities. So I think that's really what organizations have to do. They have to have this portfolio, if you will, a portfolio of initiatives. Some are, Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3. Some are quick wins, things we'll do now. They're more incremental. Other things are really out there. They're moonshots. They're radical innovation, and some of them are even transformation of the organization. So I think we have to think about how we put together a complete portfolio of initiatives that really move us in that direction. Anything else, gentlemen, before we wrap it up? Okay. Yeah.
Good. No, I think we're good.
All right. Ludwig, any last comments before we close it down?
Well, I think this was an excellent conversation. Again, the goal here is to think about how do you complement your Agile initiatives and really think a little bit more about how do you shape your future, how do you work relentlessly to identify those game-changing opportunities. And if you kind of really think about integrating that into your Agile cycles, I think you will find that there's an opportunity to innovate and discover, and really adds to that effect of what Agile is already trying to do for organizations. So you're just going to get better returns in the long run. All
right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. We're at the top of the hour, so we're going to wrap it up at this point. I appreciate everyone's participation, and Gijs and Ludwig and Rick, I appreciate your participation in our discussion. Thank you all, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us, Anthony. Thank you.
My pleasure. Goodbye.